About 11 a.m. on the East Coast of United States. Welcome, and if you are a first-time participant, special welcome to you. Today we have a very special webinar as well because we have some very special guests with us. I just want to say a few things about our webinar series. This webinar series now over 70 plus webinars since April of 2020 has been covering a lot of international business, pedagogy topics, teaching, research, and practice. And this also is jointly offered, today's webinar is jointly offered with the Academy of International Business Teaching and Education Shared Interest Group. So we take special pleasure recognizing the AIB Teaching and Education SIG members. As you know, CIBERs are national resource centers in international business, federally designated as centers of excellence, and there are 16 of us around the United States. When we talk about these webinars, we always remind that these webinars are recorded and will be available. Recordings will be available to you later on both the Georgia State University CIBER website as well as on our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to review this webinar as well as share the link with your colleagues in your networks. There will be a short survey when you exit the webinar, and today's webinar, just a reminder, is 90 minutes long. There will be a short survey. We do encourage you to respond to 5 short questions and tell us about your impressions, as well as give us your suggestions about future topics, future sessions. So that's especially encouraged and appreciated. I don't think any of us is using, any of our speakers are using a handout today. So normally we share the handouts, PowerPoints and so on, but today you just see us. And I think that's what most people want to do. They want to see the speakers here in this webinar and hear from them. And again, the webinar will be, today's webinar will be about an hour and a half. And it's a very important topic. We called it relevant, staying relevant, remaining relevant in IB education and scholarship. Maybe shorter version would have been, what keeps you going? What keeps you motivated? And why are you so productive and so eminent in the field of international business? So that's, in a nutshell, that's our theme today. And we are so pleased to have a talented moderator to run this webinar with us, Osrin Shlensky. Osrin, those of you who are members of the AIB's Teaching and Education SIG know her well, but she's known to this audience as well because she's appeared in our webinars before. Of course, Osrin is a faculty member in the School of Management at the University of Vaasa in Finland, and she holds a PhD in international management research. Research areas such as strategy implementation, M&Es, technology issues such as blockchain, operations, and also obviously a deep interest in teaching IB. Osrin is an alumnus of the prestigious Nord IB program. And if I may say so, there will be an exciting announcement at the AIB annual meeting about this version of the Nord IB program in Miami. So look for that exciting announcement. Osrin has won several awards for her teaching as well as research, and she has industry experience as well, worked in Lithuania and Egypt in several international positions as a manager. And with that, Osrin, welcome. Really nice to have you here with us today. And I'll say a few words about the panelists we have today with us. Peter Buckley, Antonella Zucchella, and Maria Teresa Fleury. And I guess they have one thing in common. They are not just well-known names in IB education, in the IB field and Academy of International Business. They're role models in many ways. They're talented in many ways. They're obviously accomplished educators and scholars and mentors. They're renowned worldwide. But they are also tireless in their efforts to leave a legacy. I think this is one commonality of all three of them. And on top of that, they are just nice people, great human beings. They're generous, they're unselfish and caring. And I think this must be one of the ingredients of remaining relevant in education and IB education. So let me just say a few words about each of them, though, in addition to these common features. We welcome Antonella Zucchella from Pavia. Antonella, thank you for joining us today. She is, of course, a professor of marketing and circular entrepreneurship at the University of Pavia in Italy. She's taught at several universities, but she obviously has served the University of Pavia for some years. She's mentored over 15 doctoral students, and research streams include, of course, international entrepreneurship, international business, and various others. She's an institution builder as well. She's the founder of the Center for International Business Research and director of the department she's affiliated with. And also, Antonella, you served as Pro-Vice Chancellor for 6 years. And obviously, you served various professional societies as well, such as IBA, AIB, and chaired conferences as well. So welcome, Antonella. Really nice to have you here. Next, I'd like to welcome Maria Teresa. Of course, she's coming to us from FGV, Getúlio Vargas, one of the best business schools in all of Latin America, but this one in Brazil, of course. Maria Teresa, you, of course, are a professor of international management at FGV, Getúlio Vargas, but you also served as the dean of FGV, as well as the University of Sao Paulo School of Economics and Business Administration. And you also have, like others, taught internationally. You've been a visiting scholar in the UK, Sussex, Cambridge, and so on, and also in France and Japan and Korea University. You mentored over 55 students, doctoral students, and your research in international management, emerging market multinationals, digital transformations is well recognized. Maria Teresa is also an institution builder, so you see common threads here. She's established, obviously, the new PhD and MBA programs at the schools where she served, both FGV and USP, and also Center for International Competitiveness. And of course, served as a dean for both schools, and also served as a director of BALAS and AMPAT, the Brazilian Academy of Management. And of course, Maria Teresa is our incoming president of the Academy of International Business. We look forward to her continued leadership in the AIB community as well. Last but not least, we welcome Peter Buckley from Leeds, University of Leeds, also needs very little, almost no introduction, but obviously Peter is an institution builder at Leeds, where he's been affiliated and started centers such as CIBER, Center for International Business Research, and also focused areas of research on India and so on. Peter, you've been also a visiting professor at the University of Queensland and also Open University of Hong Kong. And Peter has been designated and elected as a fellow, not just by the Academy of International Business, but other very distinguished societies as well, which includes the BAM, British Academy of Management, and that's a very select group of fellows, Royal Society of Arts, IBA, Academy of Social Sciences, and also a fellow of the Japan Academy of International Business Studies. Peter, of course, you taught around the world as well. In addition to your teaching in the UK, you've been in Spain, Norway, India, China, Hong Kong, France, Australia, US, Netherlands, and Italy, and have mentored over 62 doctoral students to completion, and several outside of the United States as well. And of course, member of the Nord IB. There's another connection to Nord IB. And of course, your research is well recognized on the M&E theory, international business policy, emerging markets, governance of global value chains as well. And of course, as a leader, you also served the AIB in the top position. You were the president for several years of the Academy of International Business, chaired EIBA as well, European International Business Academy, and also served as a consultant to UNCTAD. And of course, Peter carries another distinction. He is an appointed officer of the Order of the British Empire. He is an OBE, which is also a very, very, very distinguished recognition in the UK system. So I welcome you, Peter. Thank you for joining us. And I now turn to Austrine to get us going. She's prepared some hard questions for us all to respond to, and I'm looking forward to, and I'll let others respond before my turn comes, Austrine.
Thank you so much, Tamir. It's great to have all of you here. But actually, last but not least, our panelist and our host, of course, is Professor Tamir Chavusgil. So please let me introduce you as well, and all the amazing contributions and merits that we have and cherish. So Professor basically taught face-to-face in almost all the continents. It's a bit hard to list all the contributions, and now is hosting these fascinating webinars that reach all the scholars globally. So thank you for making this possibility to learn from distinguished audience. Professor Chavusgil developed invaluable teaching resources, including leading knowledge portal in international business, Global Edge, and the major textbook, International Business, The New Realities, co-authored with Professors Knight and Riesenberg. In addition to extremely well-cited, fascinating contributions to multiple research streams, ranging from exporting, international marketing, global strategy, born globals, to emerging markets in the top-level journals, Professor Tamir developed practical decision support system for assessing export readiness of companies, CORE, which was adopted by the US Department of Commerce and several other export promotion agencies in Australia, UK, Turkey, and Scandinavia. Professor Tamir Chavusgil developed institutions as well, such as cyber centers at MSU and GSU, and inaugurated and edited 2 major journals and book series, raised millions in grants funds from public and private partners, and mentoring, endless support to young scholars, continuous hard work in developing major international business academic associations are just few things among many that are worth mentioning. So impressive portfolio, and we are super happy to have you as a panelist today. I would like to thank all of you, Tamir, Antonella, Maria Teresa, Peter, being with us today and allowing us to learn from your impressive experience. And from on behalf of Academy of International Business, and especially its teaching and education shared interest group, I welcome everybody as well to this webinar. Today, our discussion will be structured in 4 parts. And first, we will reflect on general aspects of successful academic career development. Then we'll turn to management of research and teaching over different phases of the career. followed by engagement with students and business world, and ending with the tips for our webinar participants. So in each part, we will incorporate questions from the audience, and your questions are very, very welcomed. Please enter them in the Q&A section, and we'll pick them up as soon as we are ready with some major questions we would like to discuss in each part. So now, without further ado, let's get into our discussion. You are role models, and we admire your work, your contributions, and we all hope to follow at least a little bit and to achieve at least a little bit similar what you have done. And absolutely the key question to everyone is, what do you consider to be a key reason behind your long-term successful career as scholars and IB educators? Antonella, maybe you would like to start.
Okay, thanks for giving me the floor at the very start. Thanks to everybody attending this workshop and to the organizers for this excellent idea. Well, this is a difficult question, but it's also easy for me to answer. Because I think the answer, the key reason behind long-term career, I'm not sure it has been successful, let's say my career, is the passion for the job. Very simply, I mean, I always wanted to do this job. Of course, when I was a child, I was not thinking to become an academic, but I had teaching and research in my mind in the very early days. And then when I started attending university, I found that's the job I want. So for me, good academics have been role models, and they definitively confirmed that that was the job for me. So passion is very important. I think it's for every job, but our job as a vocational nature, and like any of these jobs, requires special passion to it. So you just have to keep it alive, and this will keep you determined all along.
Thank you so much, Peter.
I think that I agree with a lot of what Antonella said there. For me, I think the key thing is the intrinsic interest of the subject. I mean, international business is such a fantastic subject, and it's constantly changing. And I think the thing about keeping up with it, it's a matter of trying to keep up with the phenomenon of international business. It's a phenomenological subject. It's about what's going on in the global economy, multinationals, and so on. And I think it drives itself. I mean, there's never a problem for me in what do you do next. The question is, what of a whole range of things can you possibly take on? So I think the interest of the subject. And the second thing I would say is people, other people who reinforce that interest and help you along. And I'm thinking here particularly of research collaborators, of fellow teachers, of administrators who help, and of course of students. Doctoral students have been fantastically important in my career in bringing along new aspects, new thoughts, and so on. So keeping up with the phenomenon and reinforcing your interest with other people, I think, are the key secrets. It's very important to have good people around you in your research group as collaborators, as students. And I think those two things, and they're always changing. The phenomenon change, the people change as well. So it's a dynamic thing. It's keeping up with that that's the important thing.
Fantastic. A collective effort, sort of, and a collective building.
Yeah, I think I've said in a couple of articles that international business is best when it's a collective effort. And I think you've just reinforced that.
Brilliant. Maria Teresa.
Thank you, Osreen. Thank you, Tamer, for inviting me. And it's a pleasure. And I'm going to repeat what Antonella and Peter mentioned before. You know, since I was a child, I always enjoyed teaching, and I wanted to be a teacher. And I'm still enjoying myself, teaching, discovering new topics to study, and meeting new people. So that's why I agree with them. I think that the essential ingredient to a successful career is passion. You really have to enjoy yourself doing what you do. And then you have, the usual ingredients, discipline, resilience, and empathy. Empathy for your colleagues, empathy for your students. But for the administrative career, and you have to have the skills for leadership, for mobilizing and motivating your colleagues. And again, enjoy it. So as you can see, I also enjoy cooking. So my metaphors are somehow related to cooking. Thank you.
Fantastic. So a set of things, really. Resilience comes from passion, seems we already have this agreed upon, right? And then, of course, a number of other issues. Brilliant. Tamir.
I concur, of course, with everything that's been said, very profound. A good academic, I think, at the end of the day, must be curious person, must have intellectual curiosity. So this discipline of business and international business is so intriguing, like Peter was saying, so fascinating, so dynamic that it poses new questions, a large portfolio of questions from which you can pick and choose and put some thought behind it. Especially if you do it together with other people, it becomes, like everybody said, it becomes a lot more fun when it's a collective effort. But yes, intellectual curiosity, I think, is something that we all share. Also, I think conviction to make a difference. I mean, these people, as I said at the beginning, they're all very generous people. They dedicate a lot of time. They're caring individuals. So, you make, and our profession, right? I mean, this is the best profession. Most of us got into this accidentally, at least I did. We're all accidental educators. We didn't think about it, like Antonella was saying too, when we were young, but somehow we got very lucky and we got into teaching and found it to be very rewarding, very gratifying profession, because to be able to touch people and have an influence in their professional development and see them grow and develop and achieve their dreams, there's nothing better, nothing more gratifying than that. So this profession and the career that I pursued has become a way of life for me. It's a philosophy. It's how I choose to spend my time. It doesn't mean I sacrifice family time. That's part of my world as well. But, everything we do, whether it's teaching, mentoring, institution building, research, publishing, etc., is also intertwined and so gratifying that I'm thankful every day that I am doing what I'm doing.
Fascinating. And you touched about this positive academia that recently Professor Harsing is doing a campaign of sort of positive academia, supporting each other, enjoying each other's achievements and merits and everything. Wonderful. And in fact, the audience is already appreciating and reflecting how they were reading your works already in early days of the PhD, and reading still and using the resources that you have developed. So it's been a huge impact that you have made. So how would you define an impactful academic career, and what elements or spheres of impact does it consist of? Peter, maybe you would like to comment on
that.
I
think there are really three kinds of impact. The first one, and I think you'd expect me to say this first, is research, is contributing ideas. I had an old colleague who used to say, what would the teachers teach if the researchers didn't research? And I think that's where I come from. It's very much research-led teaching. But the second impact after research is the teaching itself. I think Tamer's right. I think we do, when we're doing it well and we're doing it right, we do make a big impact on individuals. I met an MBA student, an executive MBA student just a few weeks ago, and he'd done the executive MBA years ago. And I said to him, what did you learn from my course? Which is a very dangerous question, because he could have said absolutely nothing. But what he did say was, you taught me to think laterally. And I thought, well, that for international business, that is a fantastic answer, because we're always doing comparative, we're doing lateral comparisons. We compare foreign direct investment with licensing and exporting and so on. So I really like that. And I think we have made lots of differences to people's lives. And the third area is what we call in Britain impact, which is really impact on the real world, so-called, the world outside academia, outside research and teaching. And I think here, international business academics can have a massive influence, not just on the strategy of firms, but also on policy. I mean, most of my work's been on policy with UNCTAD and so on, designing policies and so on. And I came into the field as a development economist, and one of my passions has always been development and the people at the bottom of the pile. And UNCTAD is just such a great place to do that. So I think this is another opportunity, with the sustainable development goals and all the work that goes on nowadays. International business is tailor-made for looking at those. And if anybody wants to think about a subject, well, look at one of the SDGs and look how international business interrelates with that, because it interrelates with every single one of them. So I think teaching, research, and our external impact, and we're all in a wonderful position to make a difference to all those things. And as Tamer said before, this is why we're in the job. It's very gratifying. We get a lot out of it. And that's the beauty of the job that we do.
Yes, please, Samir. I see you have the microphone open.
Thank you, Austrian. Well said, of course. I concur with everything. Lasting legacy, leaving something behind you, touching lives, making a difference. These are wonderful things. But also starting traditions. I mean, in a sense, you're able to do something new and novel. In your research career, for example, you can start new research streams. And Peter and Antonella and Maria have done that. I mean, I remember Maria Teresa's, and with her husband, remarkable book on emerging multinationals from Latin America. I mean, so when nobody was looking at the multinationals in Latin America, they did the research and they informed us and educated us. And that became a huge stream of research in IB. So you have the opportunity to start new and novel streams of research and leave behind also institutions. You were kind enough, Austrian, to mention my involvement in Global Edge, the knowledge portal that's still the best, I think, on the web today in international business, and core company readiness to export, the journals, etc. These are all nice things that will, I think, help make your legacy. And I think everybody here in this group will have left a great legacy behind. And that's, to be able to see that, I mean, it's very rewarding. Thank you.
Brilliant. So reflecting on your thoughts, I'm thinking about these couple of things that you mentioned. So if we return to relevance, you brought up that the IB, international business as a topic itself, is sort of reinforcing, reiterating, and bringing a lot of new ideas for us to look at and to look for. And from there comes creativity, right? So we create together with this sort of renewing topics, and we can do a lot of interesting things based on new observations. But I would like also to return to Peter's idea about translating complex findings and complex research into simple language. And that obviously is extremely important, because if the relevance cannot happen if we cannot make these ideas live, make those ideas understood, and sort of get them towards the hearts and thoughts of people who are going to use them. Wonderful discussion, and we'll turn soon to the audience questions. So if you have any, please text them in Q&A. I see none at the moment, so let's hope we have some soon. But before we turn to your questions, let's discuss a little bit about the busy portfolio. Now, we already heard about so many things that you've done, ranging from teaching, from research, from institutions, from business interactions, mentoring, professional societies, potentially consulting. There's so many of that to be handled with just 2 hands and 24 hours a day. How to manage this busy academic portfolio? How did you handle that?
I can start if you like, Austrian. I would be foolish if I said that it's an easy task. It's not. It does require sacrifice, especially at the beginning of your career, one's career. I think, that especially in the US system, for example, there is life before tenure and after tenure. So most young people are concerned about tenure, and that puts a special stress and pressure on them. But I think at the end of the day, it requires budgeting your time, budgeting skills, and allocating hours efficiently and being efficient in what you do. And then working with colleagues. I mean, this has come up already. Collaboration with colleagues is not only fun and rewarding, but also makes you more productive. So whether it's your colleagues or doctoral students, and much of my work has been with colleagues and doctoral students. Almost 90% of my publications are with former colleagues and doctoral students. So that's, I think, very important, building a network of colleagues, a network of collaborators. And also, we must not forget, yes, we do talk about these multiple tasks that we are all charged with: teaching, education, mentoring, institution building, service to the associations, and so on. But there is a lot of synergy, right? I mean, so when you do, for example, consulting or projects for the practitioners, for companies, you can take the learnings and use it in teaching. You can take the learnings and develop it into a paper. If not a theoretical paper, a practitioner journal. So there's a lot of synergy in what we do. I think recognizing that synergy between teaching and research and service and utilizing it to advantage and being productive in that way, I think is part of the reason why we have been able to manage. On the other hand, you really should talk to my wife about budgeting my time and sacrificing, because I would have to be very honest and say that, well, I think you have to have a good partner, understanding partner.
Excellent tips, excellent tips. And actually, thank you. Your tips already kind of, I think, answered a question we have from Mike about tips, how to balance this research and teaching together, especially those who work in a teaching-oriented institutions. So these ideas that you've just provided, meaning how you can translate, let's say, projects or company interactions to a more practitioner research or articles, that could be absolutely one tip to go. Peter, I see you have the microphone open. Would you like to continue?
Well, just one thing to add to what Tamar said, and that's for people who are in research institutions. And the tip is, do not let research become a residual. Do not let research be the thing that you do when you've got nothing else to do, or the thing that you do when everything else is clear. And I can speak from my own experience on this. I had, when I was full-time teaching and research, I had a day that I allocated for research every week, and I did nothing, and that was a Thursday. And everybody knew Do not contact Peter on a Thursday, you won't reply. Even the vice chancellor of the university knew and said to me once, I never contact you on a Thursday. And that is just so, you know, that is, you've got to protect it. And if you don't protect it, nobody else will, and research will become difficult. So that's just a tip that I have, that protect as much time as you can, or as much time as is possible for research, because if you don't, other things will get in the way.
Brilliant tip, especially when there's so much of other activities to be done, and research really needs concentration and all this sort of continuous engagement. Brilliant tip. Maria Teresa, Antonella, who would like to continue?
Can I go? Yes, Maria Teresa.
Whatever, if you want. Oh, okay. I can. What do you want?
Okay, I can go then. And talking about busy portfolio, yes, I am definitively one of those people who had to manage a busy portfolio. As Tamer reminded us before, I have been director of department for 10 years almost, and then after that pro-vice chancellor for other 6 years. So honestly, that was the least interesting part of all the jobs I've done. But someone has to do it, as our rector used to say. But meanwhile, I never gave up teaching and doing research. I'm not saying it has been easy. It has not been easy. And sometimes you do sacrifice, more than sometimes. I remember many weekends working, and holidays, and work-life balance being not really satisfactory. Well, the good side is that, especially when you do teaching and research, you do something you like, the passion we were talking before. Another point has been recalled before, that is, with time, I think you learn how to manage better trade-offs. And you learn, as Pete said very well, you learn how to protect your time for research, for example, because of course, if you have institutional commitments, you cannot quit from meetings and all the related job. If you have teaching load, you cannot quit from it. So the risk is that at the end, research suffers because it remains the residual part of your time. So with time, you learn how to defend it better. And in my case, for example, I succeeded after some years to have a semester totally free from teaching. So I teach one semester and I only teach that semester, basically. So I kill myself with teaching load. But the other semester, I have zero teaching, because for me, for my personal mindset, I prefer to concentrate things, probably. Other people may find different approaches, but for me, this is the approach that works better. It has not been easy to obtain these. I had to bargain a lot with colleagues, moving courses between semesters, and there has been a little bit of a market of courses exchange and so on. But in my case, this was a way to protect research time. And another point which has been already raised is that I always had the feeling that even in the busiest moments, when I had many commitments overlapping, my productivity was boosting, was growing. When I have fewer commitments, I tend to slow down my rhythms as well. So I'm not sure this works for everybody, but in my case, pressure is together with passion. Pressure helps. Thanks.
Fantastic. By the end of the webinar, I think we're going to get into 4 Ps. We have passion, pressure now, So we're still lacking 2 more, and we're going to get the 4th piece to go with after the webinar. But brilliant tips. So reserving a day for research, arranging the teaching load so that one semester is free from teaching. Excellent, excellent. Maria Teresa, would you like to add something?
Yeah, you know, in other words, for me, is how to balance your professional activities and your personal activities. And I think it's very difficult. On a personal note, I married very young, and during my undergrad, Alfonso and I, we married and have children. Then we went to study abroad, came back, and I have always tried to balance all the activities, and I felt guilty all the time because I thought that I was failing, but I keep going. And you learn how to prioritize. For example, at an early stage of my career, after finishing my PhD, I tried to combine teaching, research, and consultancy. And it worked well and allowed me to have my feet on the ground and to travel around Brazil, to be, to travel to other countries, to Europe, to Asia, to the US. But when I step in at the administrative career, as Antonella mentioned, I had to give up consultancy. But I continued to teach and to do research and travel all my summer holidays to Europe. You know, I left Brazil in the summer and I went to the UK, to France, and worked during winter time. And I'm lucky because Afonso and I, we share the same interests, and it's easier to do when you are a couple. And I think that I'm good at working with colleagues in Brazil and around the world. I'm really lucky to have this opportunity to work with people around the world. And with the young professors, with the young colleagues, to renew your teaching skills, to renew your program, to renew your relationship with the students. So, you know, I really enjoy doing and trying to not to feel so guilty because I can't balance my life quite well.
You raised few extremely valuable points, Maria Teresa. So first, I think now we have another 2 Ps because Tamir also mentioned partner, understanding partner. And now you said that too. So we have definitely the 3rd P. And I think from what you've been mentioning a couple of times, it was prioritization. So that as well. Yes, you wanted to add something, Maria Teresa.
I can certainly add another P, Austrian.
Yes.
Preparation. Preparation. I mean, that's something I learned early on as well. But I think you were going to ask us about which leads to this, to my comment here: research and teaching evolve. How this. So I can start with that if you like. And,
absolutely, absolutely. One last thing which I thought of bringing from Maria Teresa's before we shift to research and teaching is actually that Maria Teresa brought extremely important topic of guilt and not always feeling well, because like when we look at the role models like you, many times we feel that it's easy, that it's going, that it's just been like that, you know, and it's wonderful to hear from your lips that it's not easy. There are a lot of sacrifices, so there's a lot of hard work and a lot of pain in there. And sort of that probably will help us young scholars or scholars in the mid-career feel better knowing that when we have to go through that it's never been given, and it's been as hard as it can get for you as well. So thank you for bringing this issue. And yes, now we have few things from the audience, but the topics that are coming in the questions are related to the picking up the research topics and in general research topics. So let's save them because we're going to discuss these things. And Tamir, please go ahead with research and teaching combination and how it evolved over the years.
Osrin, first of all, I mean, thank you for reinforcing that point about the sacrifice. I mean, it's very accurate. There's a lot of, it's never easy, it's never simple, and there's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of long nights, long hours. So we've all done that. I think when it comes to, you know, evolving, how we evolved over time in our teaching and research, in my case, it's always been a work in progress. In fact, again, if you talk to my wife, she'll say, Tamer is all about work in progress. He's still getting there. He's not there yet. So you really have to hear her about that. I'm always learning. I'm always challenging myself to learn. And I learned, one of the things I learned over time is that, you know, I have to separate content and pedagogy. In teaching especially, you know, when you leave the PhD program, you think that you're well qualified to teach. Far from it, because you don't know the pedagogy yet. And that's one of the things I learned early. You know, I knew the subject area. And of course, you have to continually update yourself because new subjects, new topics, new themes come on, because it's a dynamic field, as we were saying, but also pedagogy, being able to engage the students and experiment with different teaching techniques and resources, developing resources that work, understanding your audience and being prepared for whatever level, undergraduate, executive, etc. It requires a lot of learning, I think, over time. And I think that was certainly something I missed in the PhD program. And I think we still do not do a good job of covering pedagogy and practicum, in a sense, in our PhD programs. But I always challenge myself to engage the student competing. I was always competing actually with myself. How can I do it better next? So when I left the classroom, you know, early in my career, I realized I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't capture the attention. They were not all engaged. I didn't answer some of the questions well. So I went to my office and re-examined what went right, what went wrong, and try to do it better, try to refine it, try to improve it each time. So I think I was competing with myself. At the same time, I knew there are always good teachers, master teachers around you. So I went into their classrooms and listened to them. And I learned a lot from them. You know, each one had some unique ways of connecting with our students. And there were a lot of takeaways for me from that. So I think learning from your colleagues, especially your master teachers, I think is something very important. At the same time, I think experimenting. I always left myself open to new ways of doing things, teaching, connecting, giving assignments, how to do a semester project. For example, I used to do the semester project really like a semester project. Students turned in their work at the end of the semester. It doesn't work well. You really have to do that, keep up with the students, break up the big tasks into smaller modules, and have them report back to you so you can give them feedback along the way. So a better product results at the end of the semester rather than something that they rushed in the last couple of days. And I think staying on the cutting edge of both content, keeping up with the subject area, as well as pedagogy is very important. Learning about new trends. This last 2-3 years, we've learned a lot about online teaching and how to engage. I'm not saying we managed it, but we coped with it and we handled it, and many people did very well. So I think renewing yourself is a big part of what we do in our profession. Thank you.
fascinating you brought this different skill set. So one skill set for research and one skill set for teaching, and particularly that how this reflection helps improving reflection on others' work, reflection on ourselves, and particularly that in many ways when there are research pressures, we tend to undervalue teaching activities. So in that way, it's a brilliant tip on how we can develop over time. Fantastic. Peter, would you like to continue about how your research and teaching evolved?
Fascinating hearing this, because I had a baptism of fire with my teaching, because when I started, there were no off-the-shelf courses, very few people teaching international business. The head of department gave me advice on teaching. He said, international business, that's you, Peter. That was the beginning and the end of our advice. So I devised the course from scratch, really, based on research, and that's where, and I kept that going. But then when things settled down and the courses became more, if I could put it this way, routine, I had a particular technique of dealing with updating and so on. Let's say I had 10 modules in an MBA, 10 sessions in an MBA course. Every year I would throw one away and write another one, and the other 9 would just be revised. And quite often you threw more than one away. And so in the course of, say, 8 or 9 years, you had an almost completely new course. But the key to that is picking the things to throw away. You know, what do you discard and what do you put in? And as Tamer says, with such a dynamic subject, it's very difficult to keep up with things. So routine updating of part of the course to keep up with things, and radical change in 1 or 2 parts was the way that I managed to cope, I hope. With, you have to ask the consumers about that, but I managed to cope with the changing demands.
Indeed, particularly that it does take a lot of time. It's a huge time investment to change the session, to change the slide deck, to sort of change the topics, the materials and pedagogy approaches. Wonderful. One session at a time every year, a couple of sessions.
One of the days, you've just hit the nail right on the head, because the danger is you tinker with everything and you don't really move it on. Whereas if you take a sort of, this is the radical change in my course for next time. And as Tamer says, you often get the feedback. You know, the feedback might be, well, you know, you didn't deal with digital content, or you didn't deal with whatever. And that's the signal. Do something about that.
Fantastic. Antonella, would you like to add about your journey of renewal?
Yes, it's a continual journey. It never ends, really, because it's well, when you have fun in what you do, probably. So you never stop really updating. Also, I think we are under, going back to the pressure element, we are under the pressure to deliver good content to students and relevant content. So I think that this introduces an additional, let's say, external element. So we have our internal motivation, plus this external pressure, because at the end of each year, I carefully go through a student questionnaire, the satisfaction surveys, and what they have learned, what they liked, what they didn't like. And this is, to me, very important to update continually my course. And then there is a third additional external element, which is what's going on in the world. As Pete was mentioning, we need to keep in our subjects, particularly eyes continually open, ears continually open to change, because it's incredibly dynamic. And if you teach international business, international entrepreneurship, you always need to take into consideration that the world changes at the speed of light out there. So you cannot deliver contents that are outdated, and they can get outdated quickly, particularly those topics that are more related to the change in markets. Of course, the theories may stay, but topics related to market change need to be continually updated. For many years, we have been teaching globalization and its effect on business. And now we have to consider that there are also opposite forces, just to make an example. So that's my take on the topic.
Brilliant, brilliant. And with your comment, I think at the same time you answered the question from the audience that we have, because Alex was asking about most contemporary topic that should be added to the IB syllabus differently than it was before. And you mentioned a couple of aspects related to entrepreneurship and IB research in general. And obviously the coming trends in the market, they must land in the syllabi. Wonderful. Maria Teresa, how about you? How has your research and teaching evolved?
I think that we have to separate the what and the how. The what, I think that context matters. If you are plugged into context, local or international, new topics, new issues will arrive timely and relevant ones, both for the academia and for practitioners. For example, Tamer mentioned that, we wrote a book about emerging market multinationals and the Brazilian multinationals. It was, a timely topic on that time. More recently, I have been studying the digital economy and the digital transformation and all the problems that the emerging market firms have been facing nowadays. And it's a very relevant issue, not only for the academia, but for practitioners, for, governmental agencies and so on. So in one side, you write a paper, you do your research, you write a paper, you send it to a conference, and then you start the long road to publish. But meanwhile, you can discuss it with, managers, with practitioners, with other institutions. And it's very rewarding, and you can update the topics, not only for your research, but also for your teaching. I do the same, that people, every year I drop some, topics and introduce new ones. And now I have been introducing SDGs, and they, the doctoral students and the master, they are willing to learn very, very fast. So, but another relevant issue is the how, and methods are continuously evolving, and it's really difficult to follow in my case. So my suggestions: have your students, have your supervisees, have your young colleagues working with you, because they can, go much faster than you go and learn new methodologies and so on. So this is my suggestion.
Indeed. So we're returning to this collaborative construction and collaboration. One thing that you've mentioned was about the book and sort of course, new topics that you're currently researching. And Mike actually is asking, when do you think is a good time to write a book in your academic career? When are we ready for that? And is there any difference at what point to write a book or co-author a book?
I'm a very bad person to answer this question, because my most cited piece is a book written in 1976 and hopefully still relevant. And basically, I think part of that was through sheer ignorance, really, that came into the field. Mark Casson and I were bursting to tell the story that we thought we had, and we put it in a book. And do I regret it? No. Would I do it now? Possibly not. At the time, it was fantastic because we were able to say exactly what we wanted to say. We didn't have to refer to 50 references every line. We didn't have to kowtow to editors or anybody. We just said what we wanted to say. And that was and was a fantastic freedom. And I think there's scope for some of that. Although, if I were, as I do, if I'm advising younger colleagues, I say to them, I'm sorry, you just have to go for the top journals. That's the way it is. Maybe on the side, or maybe as well, you can say exactly what you like, or you can go to do practitioner pieces as well and other kinds of pieces. But unfortunately, I think the kind of freedom we had then is possibly much more restricted now, which is really sad. And you have to find a way of working through this because it isn't going to go away. And the role of publishing in top journals and the interference of editors and these pesky referees who tell you to do things you don't want to do and put in 50 references is unfortunately a problem. But writing a book, now there might be a possibility of saying exactly what you want to say in the ways that you want to say it. The only problem is that publishers are much more restricted than they used to be. So if you can find a way of doing that, that's great. But don't do as I did, do as I say. And that is go for top journals.
Great tip.
I agree, Roswina. I completely agree with Peter. And one of our advantages as being senior scholars is that we could start our professional career, writing books, and I wrote several books in Portuguese, and they are still very well quoted and impactful and so on. But when I have my young students asking me those questions, my answer is very similar to Peter's. Sorry to say.
Seems we have no more choice left in a way.
No, so apologies, but the career now is for the young scholar it's very tough.
Wonderful. Okay, so now we know there is still the possibility, however, to do what we like to, as Peter said, on a side at least. So while developing our career by publishing in top tier journals, we could still do something at least on the way and do something without hundreds of references and every word supported by other research. But turning to this discussion about, in general, research, and of course, research in top tier journals that gets published in these kind of journals, how have you been selecting your topics, and what is better process of topic selection for making an impact? Should it be a theory-driven topic? Should it be a phenomenon-driven topic? What would be your recommendation for, especially for the career development? Antonella, maybe you would like to answer this one.
Okay, thanks. Well, I'm definitively a phenomenon-driven researcher, which doesn't mean this is good or bad. This is my personal experience that I'm sharing with you. I'm very curious, and I like to observe phenomena, discover phenomena, and then try to develop research around novel phenomena. I nurture this curiosity because both about teaching and about research, I forgot to say this before when I was talking about evolving teaching. What I do every week, I devote an afternoon, normally in the weekends or so, to read everything which is not academic journals. That is, I read McKinsey, Bain & Co., Boston Consulting, and so on, because I want to see what their point of view, because they are, of course, they don't have a reviewer too, so they are much quicker than us to come up with, with articles and papers. So I try to see, then I look at data, I read the, I don't know, Economist or financial economic newspapers, and I try to discover if there is a phenomenon that I'd like to know more about, and that's where normally my research, but also my teaching updating starts from. So this is what I normally do. I even find a lot of inspiration. For example, in LinkedIn or so, because people maybe post some content that I missed from all the other sources I mentioned. So I try to see what are the comments about it and who comments and about what. So I think that's the way I choose research topics. Thanks.
Excellent. Excellent, thank you. I would like to now return to Tamir's earlier comment about the potential to create a research streams. That's one of the options, of course, that we all have. So thinking about this creation, what would be a strategical decision? Should we choose a topic based on what's emerging already in the journals? Or should we actually create one and try to sell to the journal and to the topic? What is better for the impact and longevity?
Thank you, Astrid. I suppose you have several choices when it comes to originating a new research project. You can certainly go to the literature and see if there is some gap or unresolved issues that may inspire you to get going and do some additional work. You may look at some data. You may have some unique data sets, and that may lead to some insights and analysis and therefore a paper. And by the way, here we have a lot of potential in IB of examining large data sets with new technologies, business analytics, data science, and so on. For example, trade data, voluminous data on imports and exports that just awaits for a young person equipped with AI and machine learning skills to go through that and come up with patterns, explanations, and new insights. That has not been done yet, but I think that's really one of the new frontiers. So there is always opportunity to go to data sets, but in the past, we worked with survey data typically, and now we have new tools available to us which enable us to investigate large data sets. You can also go to theory to initiate a research project, but I'm not sure how fruitful that is going to be unless you have some fundamental question in your mind that you're trying to respond to. So my best answer is number 4, not necessarily literature, not necessarily data, not necessarily theory, but business phenomena. And I think at least Peter and Antonella, and I think Maria Teresa will agree with me as well. That's really the starting point. So what do? You basically look at business phenomena. You make some observations. You dialogue with business executives. Yes, you read practitioner media that Antonella mentioned. McKinsey Quarterly, that should be everyone's reading list. Strategy Plus Business, which is PwC publication, and many other management consulting firms have their white pages on the website. They have their journals. These are all free, and like everyone said, they're up to date. They're current material, not the journals that covered 3 years before. So everything that gets published today is really 3 years old already. So you do some interaction with the business community. You do a bit of some projects, maybe some consulting. You do a reality check. Is this a meaningful topic? So to me, start with the business phenomena, identify some really intriguing issues and ask yourself, how can I cover this in a systematic manner? And in the explanations that I'm getting, I'm learning, how can I explain this with existing theory or new, perhaps, variation, new conceptualizations, and not necessarily within IB field, but also in related social science disciplines. So I think the theory part comes later. I think the initial point of, starting point is the observation, is the phenomenon, and then you do the research, obviously, like you are taught, and then you come up with some patterns, explanations, insights. Then you ask yourself, what theories enable me to conceptualize those findings? I think that's my suggestion anyway.
Mm-hmm. It's extremely valuable suggestion, especially knowing that the academic career nowadays is started very early. And many scholars do start their PhD process way earlier than it used to be before. So right after the graduation and not always entering into the sort of field work and industry. So basically what you were saying is still that the theory driven is okay, but the biggest insights come from the observations and the field. And this is extremely important to keep a touch on the practice, even if we're contributing to the theory and trying to theorize.
Yeah, exactly, Austrian, thank you. If I can add something, and then I think this would respond to Alex's, well, Alex put some question, our colleague, what new topics? So what's ahead of us? So if I ask myself, what is new that to bring to the classroom or a research project? When you look at the discussion around directors of corporations or top management of corporations, multinationals, number one issue is risk management, all kinds of risks. So all companies, multinationals especially, are struggling with ways in which they can get reorganized, restructured, refocused to manage a variety, a host of risks. So that's number one. Number two is responsible global business. Basically, companies are also under a lot of pressure to think about broader societal goals, right? This goes, I think, beyond SDG and so on, but this is a company philosophy that is evolving. What is it that we need to do for our community, for various partners that we have, whether it's the supplier community, the government, the customers, and so on. So I think responsible global business, and yes, sustainability is part of this, but it's more than sustainability, I think. So when we look at what McKinsey's and others are discussing, this is what it is. In fact, you don't have to go very far. Go to these management consultant journals and find out what is it that keeps senior executives awake at night. And there's your research agenda, especially for young people.
Excellent. And I think by your comment, you also touched on Philippa's question regarding sustainable development goals. So thank you very much for your reflection that it's beyond just sustainability and beyond these kind of issues within the single agenda. So if we theorize based on the phenomena, does it mean that it's okay to go towards the multiple theories and to sort of really work on the research topics that then span across the fields and span across the bodies of literature? Is it manageable? And if yes, then how easy that would be to manage? Maybe Peter, you would like to pick up on this.
Yeah, this is quite a difficult subject because I think this is part of a bigger problem. And that bigger problem is, what do you want to be known for? What is it that you are contributing to? And that is a very, very difficult question to answer in a short time and for all people, because it's very different. It puts me in mind of a quote from Oscar Wilde, be yourself, everybody else is taken. And I think you've really got to try, you've not got to be a a second Mark Casson or a second whoever you want to be. You've got to be yourself, and you've got to work out what it is. And some people are much more happy with having a kind of single lens, look at it through the point of view of a particular theory. Other people are more happy to compare and contrast theories or use them. But I think the key thing is, what is it that drives you, and where are you going to make your contribution? What is it about that? And I think then the answer about one theory or several theories falls out. I mean, I've spent my time developing a particular theory, and it's not the case that everybody should be like that. But also, you need to compare and contrast. You need, all theories need, as we've all said, need to be confronted with empirical evidence. They all need to be sure that they're explaining new phenomena and they're being updated and so on. So the point is, there's almost so much scope here in the question that you asked me, that each individual has to really think about what they want to be known for. You know, if I give you a name, you can often, against that name, say, well, that's the person who works on this, or that's the person who works on emerging markets, that's the person who does theory of the multinational enterprise, whatever it is. And that's the kind of thing you're aiming for. You're known for doing certain things. And that could be theoretical, it could be empirical, it could be all kinds of things. But I think it's important to know where you're going and what it is you're trying to contribute. And the answer for everybody, I think, will be slightly different.
Fantastic. So personal branding basically is the answer to this question. And we have not only to research, but also think about our own personal branding and where are we heading. Yeah, excellent. We discussed a lot now about sort of theorizing from the phenomena, and Antonella already started talking that while researching and picking up from practice these interesting topics for research, that's also the way to update and bring new insights into teaching materials. However, let's now discuss about practices and methods to translate those insights and sort of be added value. So Antonella, maybe you would like to continue about the ways that you translate business realities for business students and sort of the practices that you employ.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I already mentioned how I come across new topics and how they emerge, how I incorporate them progressively in my courses. And I would just like to mention what happened to me a couple of years ago. A student sent me an email and asked me, could you please keep your course the same for other 3 or 4 years? Otherwise, I cannot resell the notes I have taken. So, however, now the question you raise is about how we incorporate in the teaching increasingly international business realities. I can tell you what I do in my courses, especially the master courses. I invite managers and entrepreneurs. I try to combine a variety expressing different industries, different types of companies and so on. And they come and they do not just tell their story. I always take care to inform them that it's nice that they tell us their story, but we can already see their slides from their website and investor relations web pages. So what we want to know is about challenges they are facing, particularly related to the course topics. Imagine the entry in a new market, or there is a conflict in Europe and you have suppliers or customers there, what do you do? So we want them to speak about how they manage challenges. And so they, and also at the end of their lecture, let's say, they have to launch a challenge to the students. What would you do, students? in front of this problem. I don't know, rising transportation costs. Shanghai Harbor is in trouble, or whatever. What would you do? And they launch a challenge, and the students have to provide answers. They have some days, and they deliver a project in teams or individually, and this is part of the final assessment. This is what I tend to do every year. It's a little bit time-consuming, time-taking, because of course you have to contact people, you have to arrange their coming, and you have to force them into launching challenges and not deliver standard presentation. But I think it's rewarding for students. They love it. Thanks.
Absolutely. Problem-based learning in a very nice way, where the cases are coming right to the classroom and delivering the challenge. Fascinating. Great. But we do have situations when we cannot have, of course, those live cases, not always, and there are plenty of written cases as well that we normally use, especially in IB. Using case-based teaching is quite popular. So how do we select interesting cases from so many cases that are out there, and particularly when our audience's age differences are increasing over time? Maria Teresa, maybe you would like to comment on this one.
I have an experience very similar with Antonella, and I really enjoy selecting cases that I can bring someone from the entrepreneurial world, or a manager, or someone to talk to the students, and then they have a different feeling of what's going on. So I try to select cases and teaching material that I can bring practitioners, or I can bring new insights to the classroom. And now I think that we can use, Zoom and all the platforms, the online platforms, to help us. Because, for example, I live in São Paulo. São Paulo is not an easy place to, to commute from, the airport to the FGV, or, So if you can use Zoom, you can have people not only in Brazil, but you can have people around the world. For example, I was inviting someone from Schneider in Singapore to talk to the students, but she's a Brazilian, and she's a woman, and what is her experience? And it was fantastic. So I think that we have to use all the advantages. We had many disadvantages, but now we can use all the advantages of the online platforms to help us.
Excellent. And that only is additional motivation to keep up with the business world, because if we want to bring those examples to the classroom, we obviously have to have some contacts in our pocket to get them talk and interact with the students. The time is running super fast, and we have only 8 minutes left. And I know Peter has one fascinating story to tell about the student who has challenged him. So before we go to the final question, Peter, would you like to tell a memorable story that you said you definitely have to share over this webinar?
Yes, this is a good experience for everybody. I was teaching an MBA course, executive MBA course, and at the end of the first lecture, a student stood up and said, "What difference is what you've told me going to make to my life? What would you recommend that I do on Monday morning, first thing when I walk into my office, based on your lecture?" And that was quite a challenge. So I had to think of something to say. Second lecture, he gets up and asks exactly the same question. What have you taught me today that I can use on Monday morning when I go to work as a manager What difference will this lecture make? And again, I had to think very carefully. So I began to prepare for each lecture an answer to that question, because I knew I was going to get it at the end of every single lecture. And at the end of the course, I went to this guy and I said, thanks for asking the questions. It really made me think. He said, well, it showed that I had you on the back foot originally, but he said you coped very well with it later. And actually, some of the things you have said, I have used at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. So there we go. So everybody, when you have a lecture, be prepared for that kind of question. What use is this lecture? What can I apply? How can I apply it to my job at 9 o'clock on Monday morning? Very good discipline.
Indeed. And also probably one more takeaway from the story is that we should encourage our students to challenge us. So we don't want students who just listen to us, but also challenge us, question us, and that's how it keeps relevance going in a way. We had fantastic discussion, and one closing question for this morning, evening, or afternoon from wherever you are joining us. So I'm sure you have many tips, but one idea or advice that you wished you would have known when you were at your early career or in the mid-career or when facing challenges that you think might have changed the entire way and your entire impact. Let's start maybe from Tamir this time.
We have, first of all, on Peter's point, thank you for sharing that. You know, Peter's being very modest, and I think that's one of the assets we should have. I mean, learning from mistakes. I mean, I've done a lot of that, and I can share some really embarrassing things that I've done in the classroom, but they were learning points for me, and I learned from each of them. So being modest and learning from each of them, I think, is very important. Coming back to your question, I think it's very important. One advice, and given the time here, you know, I think I alluded to this earlier, but when I completed the PhD program and started teaching, I was very, I guess, naive, like every other newly minted PhD student. I thought to myself, okay, I've earned the PhD now, so I'm now qualified to teach. Far from it, because I knew perhaps something about the content, but I didn't know anything about pedagogy. I didn't know how to connect. I didn't know how to prepare in advance, hours and hours. I learned over time. I still today, to teach a class tomorrow, for example, I'll need to spend a couple of hours at least, renew the content, think about ways in which, think about my audience, who are they going to be, and do some creative, something new tomorrow in my class. So I think what is needed is this combination of mastery of the content, know your subject, but also you need to master the pedagogy, the practice of teaching. It requires a lot of focused effort, which we don't cover in PhD programs, except in schools of education. We prepare teachers with practicum, internships, etc. They do a lot of this. We need to do the same thing. And if you're not afforded that in your PhD program, you have to really make yourself subject to learning from others and practicing. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful tips. Maria Teresa, would you like to continue? What's your one key advice?
Take your time. You will, I would suggest to all the young scholars, you will have a long professional career. And life gives you plenty of opportunities to start new ventures. So take your time, you know, you can start again and try other venues, and life gives you time for this. Thank you.
That's very unusual tip, usually under the time pressure that the young scholars normally face, but definitely it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, like I think Professor Tsang said in his latest interview. Antonella, would you like to continue?
Well, I can only share what has been already said. I would say keep on learning, because you learn every day. I spend a lot of time, like Tamer, still preparing my lectures, which I'm supposed to know, and investing in new methods and so on. And same for research. You never stop. You never stop learning, and you need to be humble to do that, really. And another way of being humble is that you need to really confront yourself with the business world. I see often people who teach business and they have never seen a company in their life. And this is not good. I mean, this is not good. They are still business scholars. And in the end, I would like to say, be ready for challenges, because for the young people, more than for myself and my generation, I think our job, our profession, which used to be defined the most beautiful job in the world, but is going through radical changes. We still don't know which ones, but it's going to change a lot due to technology, due to competition, due to, we don't know which forces. So be ready for change, but don't be afraid.
Absolutely. Peter, your last minute, and I hope we can have even 2 extra minutes for Peter.
Well, everything that's said's great. The single thing that I would say is the key factor is resilience. You're going to have, somebody said to me recently, we're the most evaluated profession in the world. Every lecture we give, every seminar we give, the student feedback on, every paper we send can get rejected or R&R, or somebody can trash our ideas. If you've got to believe in yourself, you've got to develop resilience, and it's not easy. And as everybody has said, you'll make mistakes. Goodness me, I'm still making them all the time, and everybody makes mistakes. But developing resilience and realizing you're not the only one who got rejected. I could paper a room with rejections for my articles. You're not the only one who's been rejected. You won't be the only one who'll get a bad review. But you've got, as everybody said, you've got to learn from it, and you've got to come back from it and develop yourself as a person in doing that.
Thank you so much. We've learned dozens of things today, and it's been great, insightful, inspiring conversation. And there's a lot of appreciation coming in the chat as well. So all the participants enjoyed the conversation and your insights a lot, and they carry a huge luggage of great advice for them to make their career impactful and meaningful and cheerful and passionate, and all the other great things about it. So I hand over now to Tamir, and really one more time, big thanks from Academy of International Business.
And thank you so much. Outstanding job of moderating, carrying on this very interesting conversation. Very educational, very instructive for me. Believe me, I learned a lot from my colleagues. And Peter, I won't forget, being yourself, because everybody else is taken. It's a wonderful thing that I'm going to share with my doctoral students as well. Hopefully they're listening. So thank you all, Maria Teresa, Antonella, and Peter joining us today. It's been a really, really insightful webinar, and we look forward to future webinars with the AIB's Teaching and Education Shared Interest Group. Austrian, in fact, we have one next week, so we look forward to that one. Thank you all. We will all stay online, but we'll turn off our videos and audios. But you are welcome to take a look at some of the comments. There's a lot of praise there, and some questions we may think about for future as well. So thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.